neighbor. So I'm here prepping strawberries because this is part of my favorite season, strawberry season. But I was thinking to myself, if you've never canned or made jellies, jams, preserves, do you know the difference? So let's start at the very beginning of that. Jam, jelly, preserves. Okay? So jam is the fruit that is muddled together, so it's kind of chunky, but a smooth chunky, if that makes sense. Jelly is the juice with pectin, and preserves are large chunks of the fruit. Okay, so now you know the difference when someone's saying to you, what do you want to learn to make, or what are you making? Jelly, jam, or preserves? These are preserves. This is the first recipe that I learned that came out successful, and I think you should try this one. Okay, so rule of thumb, the way that I was taught was however many cups of fruit you have is the same amount of sugar you're going to use. So this is roughly about 4 cups of fruit. For every 4 cups of fruit, you're going to do a half of a lemon. So we're going to squeeze this in. We're going to put that into the pan, and then we're going to let that simmer for about 15 minutes before we jar. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to get this juice in. 4 cups of fruit, half a lemon, 4 cups of sugar. Okay. So these are our strawberries in. As you can see, our sugar is dissolving, and that's why we put our fruit and sugar and lemon juice on heat, so we can get all that sugar dissolved. So I'm just going to cook this down for another 10 minutes before we put it in our jar. And yes, the fruit was washed before we cut it. Also, when making small batches, you don't have to pull out your big canner. You can use a regular stock pot. I'm going to use this one that I'm sterilizing my jars in, and I'm just going to put a clean cloth on the bottom of the pan so that the jars don't rattle around, but I'll show you when I get that in. You may see some foam on the top of your fruit. No need to fear. It's normal. You can skim off some of the foam, you can skim off all of the foam, or you can leave it. It's not going to affect the taste. It may affect how it looks in the jar. Now for me, because I add a secret ingredient to my strawberry preserves, I only take a little bit of the foam off because I put a whole vanilla bean in, and the foam will suspend the vanilla beans, and you'll notice lots of vanilla beans in your foam if you take too much off, if you decide to add a vanilla bean. You see all those vanilla beans in there? So that's why I don't skim the foam, but you can. So we've taken our jars out from being sterilized, and I'm a big proponent on the why. We put them in the boiling water to sterilize them, to kill anything that may still be in the jar after you have cleaned it, because you don't want to introduce that into your preserves to grow something, because we're making these shelf stable. Once we fill our jars, why do we use the funnel? So that we can limit the amount of spill we have on our jars. So once we have them full, we also are going to clean our rims of our jars with distilled vinegar. This makes sure all the sticky, oily, any of that stuff is removed from your jar, so that when you seal your jars, they adhere to the rim to give you that nice airtight seal. So if you've never canned before, if you look inside the lid, this rubber softens when we sterilize, and then when it gets onto your jar, it's going to provide that suction that's going to pull down and give you airtight. Okay, so I'm going to load up these jars, and then we're going to put them right back in that same pan where we sterilized these with. We didn't have to change the water because it's just clean boiling water. We're going to lid them, put them in that pan, and process them. And processing is the amount of time that it stays in the boiling water. So these, because we're going with our hot preserves, only have to be processed for 5 minutes. Side note, when we say headspace, it's the amount of space from your product to your rim. So an inch of headspace is the complete rings where you would put your lid on. That's your headspace. So our jars of preserves are in, and you want to make sure that the tops of your jars are completely covered in your boiling water. That is going to ensure your seal. So we're going to put a lid on and process for 5 minutes. And now that they've processed, we're just going to remove them and place them on this towel. Now, when you're taking your jars out, you don't want to tip the water off. It'll dry up on its own, and that's why your towel down here to catch that water as well. And then we're just going to let it sit there for 24 hours, and then we're able to label it and put it on our shelf. So this fruit preserve is one of the easiest you can do, and it's a great place to start, okay? So start. You can do this. All right, I'm going to talk to you.